Imagine, two officers responding to what seemed like just another call, when suddenly the quiet night erupts in gunfire. One doesn't make it home. The other barely survives. And the shooter? He thought he'd get away with murder until the verdict left him in tears. In this true crime series, we're diving deep into the chilling cases of convicted cop killers in the United States. You'll hear how the crimes unfolded, how investigators pieced together the truth, and the shocking ways these killers reacted when handed life sentences. Tonight, we begin with the story of an ambush that rattled an entire community. It was the summer of 2010 in Louisville, Kentucky. The city was alive with baseball games, food festivals, and families enjoying long, warm nights. But beneath the surface, the community was on edge. Tensions between police and certain neighborhoods were running high, fueled by economic struggles and a rising wave of violent crime. Patrol officers David Matthews and Brian Cole, partners and best friends, were veterans of the Louisville Metro Police Department. Both men had nearly a decade on the job, and they were well respected for their steady presence in the toughest neighborhoods. On July 18th, just past 10 p.m., dispatch sent them to investigate reports of a suspicious man loitering near a closed corner store in the West End. It sounded routine, but as they would soon discover, this was anything but routine. Before we go any further, hit that subscribe button now. Stay updated on shocking true crimes that rarely see the light of day. Stick with us till the end as we uncover another chilling mystery. The man in question was Marcus Fields, a 22-year-old with a long rap sheet, burglary, drug possession, assault. He had grown up in and out of juvenile detention, and by his early 20s, he had already built a reputation as someone who hated cops. Friends later testified that Marcus believed police had ruined his life with constant arrests and surveillance. On that July night, Marcus wasn't just hanging around. He had a stolen Glock 19 tucked under his hoodie, and according to prosecutors, he was waiting for a chance to strike. When Matthews and Cole arrived in their cruiser, the street looked calm. The store was dark, no one in sight. They stepped out to check the alley behind the building, unaware that Marcus was already there, hiding in the shadows. As the officers rounded the corner, gunshots shattered the silence. Marcus opened fire at close range. Cole fell instantly, shot in the chest. Matthews staggered back, firing his own weapon, managing to hit Marcus in the leg before collapsing against the brick wall. Neighbors called 911 as the shooter limped away, leaving two officers bleeding on the ground. Cole was pronounced dead at the scene. Matthews, though critically injured, survived, and his testimony would later become the cornerstone of the case. The city erupted in shock. Louisville hadn't lost an officer in an ambush in nearly 2 decades. News spread fast, and within hours, hundreds of officers launched a manhunt. Marcus checked into a local ER for his leg wound, claiming he'd been robbed. But hospital staff noticed inconsistencies. When police arrived, Matthews, still barely able to speak, identified Marcus as a shooter. Detectives pieced together surveillance footage from nearby gas stations, showing Marcus limping away from the scene. Ballistic tests matched the shell casings from the alley to the stolen Glock found in his cousin's apartment, where Marcus had been hiding out. The case seemed airtight, but Marcus wasn't going down quietly. At trial, Marcus maintained his innocence. His defense claimed he was a victim of mistaken identity, insisting someone else had fired the shots. He sat in court, stone-faced, staring down witnesses as if daring them to speak against him. Officer Matthews took the stand, his voice breaking as he described the moment his partner went down. I looked at him, and I knew he was gone. The courtroom fell silent as the widow of Officer Cole sobbed quietly in the gallery. Prosecutors painted Marcus as a young man fueled by hatred, who saw killing cops as a twisted form of revenge. They brought in former friends who testified Marcus had bragged about wanting to take out a cop one day. After 2 weeks, the jury reached a verdict: guilty of capital murder, guilty of attempted murder, guilty of weapons charges. When the judge read the sentence, life without parole, Marcus's facade cracked. The same young man who had glared coldly through every witness suddenly collapsed, sobbing uncontrollably. He shouted that the system was corrupt, that the police had set him up. Deputies had to drag him from the courtroom as the victim's family watched in stunned silence. Outside, dozens of uniformed officers lined the courthouse steps. Some embraced, some wept. Justice had been served, but the loss of Officer Cole left a wound that would never fully heal. And that was just one case. In the next part of our story, we'll head to Texas, where a highway patrol officer's murder led to one of the most explosive courtroom outbursts ever caught on camera. A routine traffic stop on a Texas highway. Blue lights flash. A patrol officer walks toward the driver's side window, and in seconds, he's gone forever. The killer thought he'd never face justice, but when his sentence was read, his reaction stunned the courtroom. In tonight's continuation, we're looking at one of the most chilling attacks on law enforcement in recent memory. You'll see how arrogance turned into panic, how investigators built an unshakable case, and how the courtroom witnessed an outburst that no one will ever forget. It was May 2014, just outside Dallas, Texas. Interstate 20 stretched out under the setting sun, busy with commuters heading home from work. Among them was Texas State Trooper Eric Howard, a 37-year-old veteran known for his calm demeanor and dedication. Colleagues said he was a kind of officer who could diffuse almost any situation with patience and respect. Howard was a husband, a father of 2 young kids, and a man deeply rooted in his community. On that warm spring evening, he was finishing up his shift when he spotted a black Chevy Tahoe swerving dangerously between lanes. The driver was James J.T. Wallace, a 31-year-old with a long history of drug trafficking and violent behavior. He was already on parole for aggravated assault, and there was a warrant out for his arrest after skipping a court date. Wallace had been drinking heavily that day, and he knew one more arrest meant years behind bars. To keep up with this series and even more interesting true crime stories that never came to light until now, hit the red subscribe button. Now back to the story. When Trooper Howard pulled him over, Wallace faced a choice: surrender peacefully and go back to prison, or take desperate action. As Howard approached the Tahoe, Wallace grabbed a pistol from the passenger seat. Without warning, he leaned out of the window and fired twice. The bullet struck Howard in the chest, dropping him instantly on the shoulder of the highway. Other drivers screamed and called 911. Wallace sped off, leaving Howard bleeding beside his cruiser. Despite frantic attempts from bystanders, Howard died before paramedics arrived. The killing sent shockwaves across Texas. In the law enforcement community, it was more than a tragedy, it was an execution. Within an hour, every law enforcement agency in the region was on high alert. Wallace's Tahoe was identified by highway cameras, and police tracked him across county lines. For 2 days, Wallace taunted authorities on social media, posting cryptic messages about never going back alive and daring police to come find him. His arrogance only fueled public outrage. Finally, U.S. Marshals cornered him outside a motel in Shreveport, Louisiana. After a brief standoff, Wallace surrendered. But even then, he smirked as cameras flashed, as if proud of what he'd done. The case against Wallace was overwhelming. Ballistics confirmed his handgun fired the fatal shots. Witnesses on the highway identified his vehicle. His own parole officer testified that Wallace had confessed to doing something big just days earlier. Prosecutors prepared for trial knowing they had more than enough evidence. But Wallace, ever the showman, was determined to make the courtroom his stage. The trial began in 2016, drawing national attention. Uniformed officers filled the gallery every day, while Trooper Howard's widow sat silently in the front row, clutching a folded American flag given to her at his funeral. The prosecution laid out the crime in brutal detail. Dashcam footage from Howard's cruiser captured the traffic stop up to the moment shots were fired. Though the actual gunfire was just off camera, jurors heard the sound that marked the trooper's final moments. Many wiped away tears. Wallace's defense team attempted to argue intoxication, claiming he was too impaired to form intent. But prosecutors countered with his social media posts, proving he knew exactly what he was doing. After 3 weeks, the jury took less than 2 hours to reach a decision: guilty of capital murder. The question now was a sentence. Prosecutors pushed for life without parole, sparing the family the agony of years of death penalty appeals. The judge agreed. When the sentence was read, the entire courtroom braced for Wallace's response. He had smirked through most of the trial, whispering jokes to his attorneys. But now, his mask shattered. He jumped to his feet, fist slamming the defense table. "This is a joke. All of you are corrupt," he shouted, his voice cracking with rage. Deputies rushed to restrain him as he kicked at the rails, separating him from the gallery. Trooper Howard's widow sat motionless, tears streaming down her face, while his children clung to her side. Officers in uniform stood silently, refusing to give Wallace the reaction he wanted. Finally, Wallace was dragged from the courtroom, still screaming about conspiracies and betrayal. It was the last time the public would see him as a free man. The sentencing brought relief, but not closure. Trooper Howard's family spoke at a press conference afterward. His widow's words echoed through the state. He thought he killed a man, but he took a husband, a father, a son, and now he'll live every day of his life knowing he couldn't escape justice. The Texas community honored Howard with a highway dedication in his name. Every year, officers gathered at stretch of Interstate 20 to lay flowers where his life was taken. But Wallace wasn't the only one to react explosively. In our next and final part, we'll head to Los Angeles, where a teenage gang member laughed about killing a cop, until his sentencing stripped away the bravado and left him whispering words he never thought he'd say. He walked into court grinning, bragging about killing a cop. But when the sentence came down, the smile vanished. Another killer mocked the victim's family with a chilling smirk, his last free act before prison swallowed him forever. These are the final chapters in our look at how convicted cop killers react when justice catches up to them. In this closing episode, we'll explore two devastating cases: a teenage gang member in Los Angeles who thought killing a cop would earn him respect, and a domestic dispute that turned into a deadly ambush. Both men believed they were untouchable. Both discovered, in different ways, that life behind bars is a one sentence they could never escape. Los Angeles, 2009. Gang violence was reaching a peak in South Central, and officers patrolled the streets daily in what felt like a war zone. Among them was Officer Daniel Rivera, a 29-year-old rookie just 2 years on the force. His family described him as a dreamer, a first-generation college. At trial, Martinez wore a smirk every day, staring at the victim's family. He whispered to other inmates, flashed gang signs, and even winked at reporters. The evidence against him was overwhelming: eyewitnesses, ballistics, even gang members testifying that he bragged about dropping a cop. But the defense argued he was too young to understand the weight of his actions, portraying him as a misguided teenager. After weeks of testimony, the jury returned. Guilty of first-degree murder, guilty of attempted murder, guilty of weapons charges. The judge handed down life without parole. The room fell silent, waiting for Martinez's reaction. For the first time, the smirk disappeared. His eyes dropped to the floor. He whispered, "I'll never be free again." That single line told the story of a young man who thought murder made him powerful, only to realize it had stolen every ounce of freedom he'd ever know. Now, our final case takes us from Los Angeles to rural Ohio, 2017. Small towns rely on their police officers not just for safety, but for peace of mind. That trust was shattered one full evening when a domestic disturbance turned into tragedy. Officer Michael Caldwell, 33 years old, was dispatched to a home where neighbors reported shouting and broken glass. Caldwell had a reputation as a calm, compassionate officer. He often told younger recruits, "On calls like this, your job isn't to win, it's to protect." But as Caldwell approached the house, Samuel Barker, a 42-year-old ex-con with a history of violence, was waiting inside with a shotgun. Barker had been drinking heavily and was furious at his girlfriend for calling police. When Caldwell stepped through the doorway, Barker fired point blank. Caldwell never had a chance. Barker was arrested after a brief standoff. In interrogation, he showed no remorse, telling detectives, "Cops shouldn't stick their nose in my business." At trial, his attorneys tried to mount an insanity defense, citing years of mental illness and substance abuse. Barker often laughed during testimony, sometimes staring directly at Caldwell's widow in the gallery. The courtroom atmosphere was electric with tension. Witnesses described Barker's violent temper. Prosecutors introduced chilling 911 audio of the gunshot that ended Caldwell's life. The jury had little doubt. After only 5 hours of deliberation, they returned with a guilty verdict on all counts. Graduate who wanted to bridge the gap between police and his community. But one summer night, Rivera and his partner responded to reports of gunfire. As they pulled into a narrow street, a group of gang members scattered. Shots rang out from behind a dumpster. Officer Rivera was hit in the neck, his partner barely surviving by returning fire. The shooter was just 19 years old. Luis Martinez, a gang recruit who believed killing a cop would cement his reputation. Before we go any further, hit that subscribe button now. Stay updated on shocking true crimes that rarely see the light of day. Stick with us till the end as we uncover another chilling mystery. When arrested, Martinez laughed in the interrogation room. Detectives recorded him saying, "I'll be a legend. They can't touch me." In his world, prison wasn't punishment. It was status. Prosecutors knew proving otherwise would be their greatest challenge. The judge sentenced Barker to life without parole. The courtroom braced, waiting for his reaction. Barker didn't cry. He didn't rage. Instead, he leaned back in his chair and smirked. He locked eyes with Caldwell's widow and curled his lips into a mocking smile. The widow clutched her hands, refusing to break down in front of him. Prosecutors later said it was one of the coldest displays they'd ever seen in a courtroom. That smirk was the last choice Barker made as a free man. Moments later, deputies shackled him and led him away. These cases raise questions that linger long after the verdicts. Why do some killers crumble under the weight of a life sentence while others smirk in defiance? Is it fear, denial, or refusal to show weakness? And for the families left behind, does life in prison feel like true justice, or just the closest thing the system can offer? From Marcus Field sobbing as deputies dragged him from court, to James Wallace raging at a Texas judge, to Luis Martinez whispering about his lost freedom, to Samuel Barker's chilling smirk, each reaction is different, but the outcome is the same. For taking the lives of officers sworn to protect and serve, they will never walk free again. But now I'll leave the question with you. White right pointing backhand index, do you believe life in prison is enough for those who murder law enforcement officers? Or should the death penalty always be on the table? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. And if you found this story compelling, make sure to like, subscribe, and stay tuned for more true crime cases where justice is delivered, sometimes in ways you least expect. If this story sent chills down your spine, don't walk away. Subscribe now and hit the bell. Join us as we uncover the hidden truths behind shocking crimes like this one, and see for yourself how appearances can be deadly deceiving. Stay with us till the end. You won't want to miss what comes next.